for it not too long ago, but I did want to provide just a little background for tonight's meeting. The Rmp program is established by Section 112R of the Clean Air Act, which requires facilities that use extremely hazardous substances to develop a risk management plan, which will do a few things. It identifies potential effects of a chemical accident. It identifies the steps the facility is taking to prevent an accident, and it spells out emergency response procedures should an accident occur. As we discussed before, and as you know, the EPA implements the Rmp program in most of the nation, and they hope to inspect about 1 to 2% of their covered facilities that they regulate each year. Our goal is to inspect about a third of our facilities annually. APCD is one of the few state or local agencies that continues to implement the Rmp program, and we do so with good reason. The risk present in the Rubbertown community and other impacted areas in Louisville Metro supports our decision to retain delegation at the local level. Recently, the Trump administration finalized some amendments to the Rmp program. Some of the amendments that were rescinded elements that were adopted by the Obama administration that some felt strengthened the Rmp program by ensuring that information regarding chemical safety and accidents was available to communities most at risk. And this is a paramount consideration of the Rmp program. As the basis for its decision, EPA explained that, and I quote, that such levels of government oversight in conjunction with a rigorous safety management program can prevent serious accidents. But this level of oversight is very expensive and not feasible at facilities regulated by the Rmp rule on a national basis. Fortunately for us, state and local programs like APCDs play a special role under the Clean Air Act and are charged with adopting programs to address issues of local concern. So to that end, APCD is utilizing this ANPR to initiate a community conversation to gather input and to discuss and propose changes that work best for our community, including whether implementation of the additional requirements may be more practical and beneficial on a local level. So I want to let you know that copies of the ANPR, an FAQ sheet, and a legal notice that we're seeking public comment through August 25th are available on our website at Proposed Actions page, and that would be at www.louisvilleky.gov/APCD/docket. And so we would appreciate it if you share with anyone you think might be interested in this meeting via your social media contacts. And then additionally, I'd like to let you make the board aware that the district's PowerPoint presentation that we provided at an earlier board meeting when we discussed the Rmp program is available on our website, and I can send that link out after the meeting. It will further allow you to review the discussion about Rmp before the meeting this evening. And please just contact me if you have any follow-up questions. So as we continue our work to reach out and to engage with the community, on July 2nd, the district held a virtual community meeting to hear comments, answer questions, and discuss concerns from the Shelby Park community regarding a new renewal permit for 4 technologies. If my memory serves me correctly, I think there were around 26 non-APC participants in the meeting. During the hour-and-a-half meeting, the district listened to and attempted to answer questions and address concerns. There was also a representative from Fourth in attendance who answered questions and addressed community concerns from the company's perspective. I believe the meeting provided sufficient and ample opportunity for the community to express their concerns and for the district to answer questions that were asked and provide accurate information concerning the permit and our understanding of the Fourth technology operation. APCD permitting staff are preparing a written response to all comments and questions, which will be provided once they are complete. But as always, and I can't stress this enough, the district will accept any additional comments for review and will appropriately address any that have any bearing on the regulatory status of the permit. On June 30th, Rachel, Michelle, and I had the opportunity to address the leadership Louisville Leadership Team, or the LLT as it's referred to, and it is composed of a mayor, various chiefs, and senior administrative and support staff. And so while the genesis of our appearance before LLT was in response to a second article published by Dr. Gilderbloom, I felt it was more prudent and productive to address the underlying premise of his articles and not the articles themselves. And so to summarize, this is what I conveyed to the LLT, and I think it's important for you to know about those conversations that we have with the administration and the direction that the district is moving. And so this is what I said. The premise that environmental justice is important and should be a priority is valid. We agree with that there are parts of our community that bear a disproportionate share of environmental burden in our city, and that burden has resulted in a disproportionate share of health impacts, including a disparate mortality rate for some of our neighborhoods. That is all true, and I just wanted to put that on the table first. And while the article itself was flawed in a number of ways, from pure misstatement of facts to the use of outdated data and time frames, the article itself was not the real problem. At best, the article is merely a distraction and could be seen as a counterproductive impediment to the real change that needs to take place. As you all know, historically, and for some of the same reasons that there is currently unrest and protest in our streets, systemic racism has exposed some in our community to disproportionately high levels of air toxics and other air pollutants. And while the community, and while we continued with vigorous enforcement of STAR regulations and with the additional controls at the Mill Creek EGU and the conversion of the Cane Run facility to gas have all made significant improvements in air quality, there is still an unfair and inequitable difference in exposure for parts of our community. And the years, the decades of the much higher emissions have taken its toll on the economic and social structure of these communities, not to mention the health of the residents. So the message that I wanted to and did deliver was this: we do have environmental justice issues in our community that need to be addressed in conjunction with the other inequities facing segments of our community. I told them that rubber town and air toxics have been a long-standing problem that, while improved, have had legacy health consequences for older, long-term residents of these impacted communities and current impacts for those currently living at the fence line. There are many questions that must be asked and many possible solutions that must be considered if we want to begin to address these issues. All of these inequities, including environmental justice, have created a hostile environment in which many live. There are health and quality of life impacts for some of our most disadvantaged citizens, and then the inequities create a daily anxiety that in and of itself affects health and mortality. I told the LLT that APCD has heard many, many times from the community how all of these things impact their lives. So I gave them one man's opinion, which is not really one man's opinion because the APCD team discussed these issues almost daily. But I simply put, I recommended the development of a metro-wide environmental justice policy, one that includes all of the agencies whose work touches these issues, from public health and wellness to the Office of Sustainability to resilience to the work encompassed in the comprehensive plan around land use and planning. I told them that the district believes and stands prepared to do this work and support our metro peers to bring real change. I told them that this work will represent the type of transformative and impactful change that our community is calling for. So after that, I got down off of my soapbox, apologized for my mini rant, but I believe our message was well received. And so as a follow-up and as part of the Metro's Build Back Better Together, often referred to as B3 Together initiative, we met with Kendall Boyd, Metro Chief Equity Officer. And after a very productive discussion that really just verified that we were on the same page, Kendall included APCD in a second regularly scheduled meeting that he had scheduled as part of 3B Together, work that included Sabine Nassim from the Office of Globalization and Jessica Weatherton from Communications. And in that meeting, we all agreed on the need for Metro-wide environmental justice policy, and that it needs to include all of Metro and include real community engagement. So I think we've made some good sound first steps, and I assure you that the district will stay fully engaged, and I will keep the board updated as to our progress. And so as all of these things have unfolded, there have been some new things that have occurred. And so if you will allow me just real quickly, I think yesterday, the Climate Mayor's letter to congressional leadership, Mayor Fisher signed on to it. Let me just give you some quick background. I'll read from the document. And just by way of background, the Climate Mayors was founded in 2014. It is a bipartisan network of almost 450 U.S. mayors in 48 states working together to demonstrate leadership on climate change through meaningful actions in their communities and to express and build political will for effective federal and global policy action. Mayor Fisher has served on the steering committee since December of 2019. The Climate Mayors are calling on Congress to move forward with a just, equitable, and sustainable recovery package in the months ahead. In the attached letter, they recommended policies that represent bold, ambitious, and meaningful actions which would support both equitable COVID-19 recovery and a transition to a decarbonized, climate-resilient economy. They are gathering signatures of mayors in the coalition who want to urge congressional action. And so some of the things that this policy recommendations will include some of the work that we're doing, the Building Back Better. We want to make sure that federal investments are leading with equity. So investments in our municipalities prioritize those communities that have been left behind and frontline communities and people of color who have been disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change and COVID-19. And then they wanted to make sure that they were prioritizing the multiple benefits. The best investments will create jobs, strengthen communities, and improve health outcomes in our cities and towns. So they had some broader range recommendations for the federal stimulus package. And so just briefly, they wanted to reduce energy costs for small businesses and low-income families. They wanted job creation and to improve public safety through investment and innovation and infrastructure. Want to advance zero-emission technologies and policies, and then expand the energy and grid modernization. And so these are just some of the things that they are working on and moving forward with. There also, in just the last few days, has been a scheduled review of Louisville's land development code to weed out those elements that are racist in their intent or in their implementation, and begin to remove those that have contributed to environmental justice issues, segregation, poverty, substandard housing, and all of the impacts that racism brings upon our community. And so that review is really just foundational to the work that we do. It is one of the things that we have tried to impress upon folks as we talk about our work in environmental justice, and that a lot of that work needs to occur long before those issues reach the district. And a big part of that has to do with the land development code and zoning and things of that nature. So I'm just incredibly happy that both of these things are currently taking place, that we're having some very serious conversations about environmental justice, and I will obviously keep the board apprised of all of that movement going forward, because this is just really important work. It is work that I know that you all are fully aware of, and to finally see this kind of movement on a metro-wide basis is just really, really encouraging. So as all of this work begins to come together, I think I mentioned at a prior board meeting that APCD has become a standing member of the Office of Sustainability's regular updates to the Louisville leadership team. That monthly meeting presentation was made this past Monday, and our presence is to be a resource and to provide air quality air quality perspective to these discussions. It is inherently a naturally synergistic and collaborative participation on our part. And so we look forward to this opportunity to further advance our clean air work through some of the other efforts that are taking place within Metro. The district also had the opportunity to present before the Louisville Forward team at their regularly scheduled weekly meeting. And so we were able to update them on ozone and the multi-pollutant stakeholder group process. As we have been striving to do over the last several years, the district has worked to expand our voice and our expertise throughout the enterprise where appropriate. And this is really just another example of that effort. On June 29th, the last Clearing the Air workshop was held before we take a summer break. And so this workshop was an oldie but a goodie. It was APCD 101. We had about 20 participants for this updated presentation. And I just want to let you know that this is not the end of it for the year. The workshops will resume in September with a date to be determined. As we continue to telework, we have taken advantage of many of the virtual training and educational webinars that are available. And so I just wanted to update you on one. Most recently, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Air Management Association has been conducting a series of trainings, beginning with the first one was air quality management. The second was air pollution and the Clean Air Act. And then just this past week, it was SO2 health effects. And so we've the many EPA district staff participated. Upcoming events include air toxics and control programs, ozone formation and effects. Maybe this might be one that we need to lead on. And then PM effects and PM modeling. So as you can see, we've really had some really timely topics that are being addressed. We will continue to work hard to keep our staff productive and engaged during this time of extended telework. And I just want to assure the board that our staff, continues to be incredibly productive during this time. And so just very proud of the work that they're doing. That really kind of concludes my portion. If there are no questions, we do have, as part of the director's report, a couple of brief presentations by Rachel Hamilton and Billy DeWitt. But first of all, I will again ask if there are any questions for me at this point.
Mr. Talley, thank you for an excellent update. Are there any questions or comments from any of the board members regarding his director's report?
No comments.
Okay, very good. Okay, Mr. Talley, I guess we will proceed.
All right. Well, then, if you'll allow me, hopefully Rachel is back online. Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Talley. Board members, it is time for us to give you an annual report on the state of the Air Quality Trust Fund. The Air Quality Trust Fund is a fund of money that the board manages. It may only be used for funding air quality research and development projects, special non-recurring air quality projects, or air quality education programs. The Air Quality Trust Fund cannot be used for the district's day-to-day operations. The current balance of the trust fund is $18,820.33. The fund is maintained by Louisville Metro Government's Office of Management and Budget in a restricted interest-bearing account in accordance with APCD Regulation 1.17. There were no disbursements from the Air Quality Trust Fund during the past fiscal year. However, the board at its September 18th, 2019 board meeting encumbered up to $8,000 from the Air Quality Trust Fund for the district to deliver a targeted air quality messaging campaign and information resources in a 6-neighborhood study area generally referred to as the Green Heart Project that is part of the University of Louisville's Envirom Institute's Green Heart Study, where they are rigorously and scientifically attempting to assess the impact of green space on air quality, health, in urban communities. To date, the district's participation in this project has been delayed by COVID-19. Are there any questions on the Air Quality Trust Fund report?
I have one question, Mrs. Hamilton. You said a balance in the and our quality trust fund is 18,000. Does that, have you dispersed $8,000 that we approved at the last board meeting back last year?
No, sir. That amount is encumbered based on the board's decision to fund up to $8,000.
Okay.
There have been no disbursements made against that authorization.
Okay.
So, any others?
Well, thank you very
Moving
much.
on.
Thank you for the update.
Board members, I'm hopeful that some of my technology issues yesterday with email allowed you to receive a copy of a letter that the board received from Representative Kevin Bratcher of the 29th Legislative District regarding some objectionable odors from the Metropolitan Sewer District's Cedar Creek Wastewater Treatment Facility. Early in June, the district received a spate of odor complaints. Our community compliance staff met with MSD plant staff, discussed the odors and the issues. Our understanding from MSD is that these odors coincided with restarting fan operations in the late afternoons. While we requested additional information from MSD as to the root cause of the odors, they responded that they were no longer turning off the digester fans during the day. They stated this change would be permanent unless they determine a different source of odors. Since then, that appears to have abated the chronic odor issue. We have received 2 additional odor complaints recently. Our staff investigated those, but were unable to observe any objectionable odors during their inspections. We'll continue to monitor the situation. Representative Bratcher and I have discussed the district's investigation and the response from MSD and their current compliance, and we'll keep you informed if there are additional complaints. Any questions?
This is Chairman Hilton. What next steps will a district take regarding this matter? It seems like it's an MSD problem.
We will continue to monitor reports of objectionable odors under APCD Regulation 1.13, and we'll take action if those continue. We do have continued conversations with MSD around odors that we cited them for last year, and we'll be working through the resolution of those in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from any of the board members regarding Mrs. Hamilton's report?
No questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Hampton.
Chairman, up next we have just some brief remarks from Billy DeWitt just to discuss a few of recent air quality events.
Okay.
Billy? Need to unmute, Billy. There you go.
Hilton, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, great. Chairman Hilton and board members, we just wanted to go over a few of the items on this month's air quality board report. First, for a little background and context, I wanted to show what we keep track of on page 2 of the report, which are the design values for PM 2.5. We have 2 standards for that pollutant. First is the annual mean, and that's where we just take all 24-hour averages that we measure throughout the year and average those together. And that's against the standard of 12 micrograms per meter cubed. This one has traditionally been a challenge to maintain low levels each day throughout the year. Right now, we're look to be in very good shape. We're well below that 12 microgram standard on an annual average. We're right around 10 micrograms. The second design value that we have to look at is the 24-hour design value, and this is simply the 98th percentile of highest single-day averages. Traditionally, we don't have issues meeting this standard of 35 micrograms per meter cubed for a 24-hour average, but there are some rare or unusual events that do challenge us, and this is the standard which I'll be comparing these future numbers to that I'm about to show you. The first special report that we added in the board report was the Saharan Dust PM event. Occurred on June 27th. I'm sure most folks saw that in the media. This event, the Saharan dust is a common occurrence that it comes across the Atlantic Ocean, and I think Florida sees it quite frequently. It rarely does get up to Kentucky, however, but occasionally it makes its way up here. And so all the models showed that we would receive dust from this event, so we kept a close eye on it. And in fact, on June 27th is where we took the brunt of the Saharan dust event, and we did have 24-hour averages elevated. You see on 6/26 where our averages were around 10 and 11, and the next day the averages were in the low 20s. And it could have been a little higher even than that. As you can see from this graph, the hourly numbers reached as high as 45 micrograms per cubic meter, but luckily some precipitation came along with this dust and sort of washed the numbers down later in the day. So the 24-hour average was down in the 20s, and we did not have an exceedance of that 35 microgram per meter cube standard, largely due to the rain washing the dust out. The next particulate matter event occurred is something that really is a thing we have to look at annually, and that is the fireworks celebrations on July 4th and the days surrounding that. In this case, on the 4th, we did actually have an exceedance of the standard at our near road site. We measured 36.2 micrograms just over the standard for 24-hour average. And then on the next day, we did not exceed, but we again got close at that same site. And below we have a graph of the measurements, the hourly measurements that we took on those days. You can see what really drove the exceedance at the Durrett Lane site was an extremely high 1 hour average around 300 micrograms. On the 5th, it was a more sustained group of 4 or 5 hours, around 100 micrograms. So the other sites were also high, but we did not exceed. It's really challenging to predict what's going to happen in certain neighborhoods as far as localized firework displays and how frequently people will do those. So we did exceed the standard on July 4th. Moving on to a day or so later than that, and the pollutant ozone, just wanted to give you an update after we had the challenges on July 4th and 5th with PM. We had some on the 6th and 7th with ozone. It's been a relatively quiet season in ozone, but that has been on the uptick lately as we're having a more normal July weather, meteorologically speaking, than previous years with very hot, stagnant air. So the event on July 6th was interesting from a weather standpoint, as several sites were rising throughout the day, and there was a wind shift, and a couple of the northerly sites dramatically went down, and the southerly sites then started to rise. But the site right in the middle of all that was Cannon's Lane, and it sort of received the ozone plume from both directions throughout the day. So we did have an exceedance there at 75.7 parts per billion. That standard is 70 for an 8-hour average. And then on July 7th was a more typical regional ozone event, and the winds were more consistent and out of the south and west. And when that happens, we usually see exceedances at Cannons Lane and then north of that in New Albany. And so we had exceedances for both of those monitors on that day. So that's just a review of some of the pollution episodes that we've seen. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's any out there.
I had a question. One with regard to the July 4th, how many were from, say, municipalities? You know, so you can't do anything about personal fireworks, but, you know, in terms of, I don't know if there was like whatever communities or, you know, in the past, you know, you had, you know, things that say Expo or Slugger Field, you know, so, and those are things that, you know, are, could possibly be requested in terms of as a Metro Council type of thing.
It's my understanding that most of the organized displays like that were canceled this year due to the pandemic situation. There may have been some, but I'm not aware of those. I
was a little concerned because we exceeded the amount when there was, you know, theoretically less, you know, so in terms of future, you know, when there is not the pandemic and there's more organized, you know, I would expect to see more areas and higher exceedances then.
Well, we see the exceedances when they happen on a neighborhood level because it's lower to the ground. And we measure particulate from 2 to 7 meters high, and we do that to simulate what's there that folks breathe for the most part. So it's more ground level when the neighborhood displays like that. And really, one of these exceedances could literally be triggered by one home that's somewhat near the monitor, and as that fireworks plume moves through, we'll see that exceedance, especially when there's a really high 1 hour. It drives that entire 24-hour average.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions or comments from any other board members? Here none. Billy, thank you very much for an excellent update.
I think there's a question from one of the attendees.
Oh, okay.
If you go to the Q&A. I can read it if you can't find it. If you guys can't find it.
No, I don't. Can you read it, please?
Yes, it's from Stuart McCullum.
Okay.
Will either the dust event or 4th of July days be flagged as exceptional event or QA monitoring data submitted to EPA?
Yes, we are required to put qualifying flags on that data to provide information to anyone that looks at the data about why that occurred. So if we have an explanation for why that data occurred, we do flag it as exceptional. However, it will not be stricken from our data set unless we specifically ask it to be so. And we can only do that if we actually violate the design value, which we do not anticipate violating that design value from one day's event. So it will be flagged, but it will most likely remain part of the set of data.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions from board members? Billy, I'd be interested in looking at this probably around November because of the COVID-19, because most of those companies in Jefferson County did not really close 100%. So it'd be interesting to look at some of the numbers for 2019 versus 2020. If we had any increases or whatever, it'd be interesting to see that, because I know since March, most of these companies have been on limited production rates. I don't think any of them really close 100%.
Yes. And so when we have done a cursory look at comparing the most strict quarantine conditions of this year with the same period of 2019, and the biggest difference we see is a drop in pollutants like NO2 and CO, largely due to the lesser traffic on the roads. So although many industries continue to operate, there were less vehicles on the road, and we did see some reductions in pollution, we believe, because of that.
Okay, thank you.
And just one more clarification. What, in terms of where the monitoring is, you had said that where it's monitored was it 3 to 7 meters, and of where you're actually having the intake, and is that kind of a standardized how it's being monitored, you know, and all the different sites? Is that specific height?
Very, very much so. The all ambient air monitoring that reports data that are used for comparison to the ambient air quality standards must follow very strict regulation laid out in federal regulation, parts 50 through 58 in the CFR. So every pollutant has very specific siting limitations that we must follow, and we routinely verify that those sightings are met. The state of Kentucky audits us on those sightings, as well as the EPA. So we do undergo a very quality process to make sure those are cited correctly.
Okay. And so what is that then?
You mean what are the citing requirements?
Yeah.
Well, it does differ for each different pollutant. For particulate matter, it has to be within a certain range of meters above the ground. There can be no obstructions nearby. They have to be specific distance from each other when they pull air in, so they don't interfere with each other. A list of things like that. For ozone, they're more concerned about location from drift line of trees, because trees tend to scavenge both for ozone and sulfur dioxide. So it varies on the pollutant, but it usually strictly tells us how high or at what level above sea level we can put it, and some other siting restrictions as far as obstruction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments from any other board members? If not, Billy, thank you very much. Mr. Talley, does that conclude the director's report?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, the air quality data. Most of you have received the information electronically. Are there any questions regarding any of the data in that report? Okay. You also received the enforcement status report. Are there any questions regarding that? Excess emission report. And complaint investigation status summary. I can make a comment. I didn't see, I think last month we noticed a lot of open burning on the reports. I didn't see that this month. Is that typical? Open burning violations?
Yes.
Okay.
Open burning violations tend to drop in the summer as it gets warmer. A little more uncomfortable for people to manage. Okay,
thank you. You also received the lawn care for cleaner air quarterly report. Any questions regarding that report? Hearing none. I think we have completed our agenda for the day, so I will now close the regular meeting of the board. And thank you for your participation. Stay safe. And the next board meeting is Wednesday, August the 19th, 2020 at 10 a.m. Thank you very much for your participation. Meeting is adjourned.